President Trump says the US is freeing up Cuba hours after charges were brought against the country's former president, Raúl Castro, in connection with the shooting down of two planes in 1996. 4 people, 3 of whom were US citizens, died in the attack on the aircraft, which were being operated by a group of Cuban exiles. The US has issued sanctions on the country and imposed a blockade on oil to Cuba that has resulted in blackouts and food shortages. Earlier on Wednesday, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio issued a message to the Cuban people saying President Trump is offering a new path between the US and a new Cuba. The Kremlin says Russia will continue to support and stand in solidarity with Cuba, despite the US tightening what it calls the noose of sanctions around the communist-run island. Our Cuba correspondent Will Grant has this report.
At 94, Raúl Castro remains the power behind the throne in Cuba. Brother of the late Cuban leader Fidel Castro, he was last seen in public at the annual Workers' Day march in May. Now the Trump administration wants to try him for murder and conspiracy to kill US citizens. The charges relate to an incident in 1996 when he was the defense minister. 2 US civilian aircraft were shot down by Cuban fighter jets. The US planes were run by a Cuban-American group that supported migrants at sea, but the Cuban government accused them of repeatedly violating its airspace. Cuba's president called the charges a political manoeuvre devoid of any legal foundation. But on the streets of Havana, others didn't jump to Mr. Castro's defense. I hope this won't have an impact on the Cuban people, said this man, who didn't want to give his name. No matter his rank, he's just one person, and I don't think it will affect us. I'm afraid the Bible says you'll reap what you sow, added this man.
That flashpoint in US-Cuban relations from 1996 was supposed to be dead and buried, consigned to the long history of conflict between these old enemies. Now it has reared its head again as the Trump administration tries to exert maximum pressure on the Cuban government. The inference from Washington is that after they removed Nicolás Maduro from Venezuela, they could conceivably do the same to Raúl Castro in Cuba.
Meanwhile, President Trump has dismissed the idea the indictment could lead to further escalation.
No, there won't be escalation. I don't think there needs to be. Look, the place is falling apart. It's a mess. And they've sort of lost control. They've really lost control of Cuba.
Most Cubans are less concerned with politics between Washington and Havana than on trying to survive. Since January, the US has imposed a near-total fuel blockade on the island, which has affected every facet of daily life. Cuba knows it has little room for negotiation with the Trump administration. Now a murder charge 3 decades on against one of the revolution's historic leaders is stretching this broken relationship to the point of no return. Will Grant, BBC News, Havana.